Alex Carlucci. I'm here with Dale Alenteni, and we are with Gustin Cho Associates. We are a mortgage company that does some of the toughest loans in the business. So if you've been denied a loan, you can give us a call. You got a unique situation, give us a call. Today, we want to discuss with you 1099 income calculations or the rules of 1099. This will be a short video, but a lot of people do things during the loan process that they need to know not to do, or to prepare for a mortgage down the road, they need to understand the 1099 rule. So I'm going to talk about first the basic 1099 program that's been around since I've been doing this 27 years. So in the old days, if you were 1099, let's say you were at a job for 2 years, the same job, one 1099 each year. And the only way to get a loan in the old days was to have 2 years 1099, and you had to file your tax returns for those 2 years, and they would average your adjusted gross income. So the difference between a 1099 and a W-2 is you don't pay taxes on your 1099. You get the full amount. Not a thing's taken out. No health insurance, no taxes, nothing. You whatever your pay rate is, you get all of it in your check. So at the end of the year, you got to pay taxes. Now, when you're 1099, you're treated like you're self-employed, like you have a business. Even though you might be working at an hourly rate somewhere, you're treated as a business. You can start writing off your house, your shoes, your cell phone, your gas, your car, everything. And you could take a $100,000 salary and you could write it off to zero. You could have $100,000 expenses and your income will be zero. And that's what the underwriter is going to use. They're going to use a 2-year average of the tax returns. The W-2 or 1099 means nothing. It's the tax returns, adjusted gross income after expenses, and average for 2 years is what they use. So if you made adjusted gross income after expenses $30,000 in 2021, and you made $10,000 in 2022 adjusted gross, the underwriter is not going to use anything because your income's declining. So you don't want to write too much off when you know you're going to be applying for a mortgage. And remember this, you can't modify your tax returns to qualify for a mortgage. So if you say, oh, I'll just modify it right now, you can't do that because the underwriter has like a 6-month waiting period. If you reduce your expenses on amended returns just to qualify for a mortgage, it's a no. If there's a true mistake and you can prove it, then they allow for amended returns. But most people are trying to amend their returns to qualify, and they're changing their expenses on their 1099 income, and they're not qualifying. So that's one rule of 1099 income. So they're going to average the last 2 years. So you want it increasing the adjusted gross, and then they're going to average it, or staying the same, or going down a little bit. So remember, what you write off and what your adjusted gross income is going to be crucial to what you qualify for a mortgage. Another thing that people don't understand that happens very often in this business is if you're 1099 or if you're W-2 and you're about to take a new job and it's paying you twice as much and you're not going to pay taxes on it, you're going to find out that you can't get a mortgage right away because you don't have 2 years of tax returns. Now, there's some other options that have come out recently that 1 year would be enough, but I'm not going to get into that just yet. But so don't ever switch to a 1099 job before getting a mortgage because it's going to require a waiting period no matter what.
Alex,
yes.
What about the reverse? What if you've been 1099 for the last year and a half? Maybe you're a truck driver and you're going to go W-2.
Was just going to get to that. So let me tell you about what you can do. If you are 1099 and you switch to a W-2, you can do that, no problem. Your company you're at, let's say you are a truck driver. Let's say your truck driving company likes you so much and they just say, hey, we'll pay a salary or hourly, no problem. But if you're a truck driver making a 1099 and you're paid per load, which is variable income, and you switch to a W-2, and now your variable income, you're going to have a problem using that income because it doesn't blend. The W-2 income doesn't blend well with the 1099 income. So I always recommend people, if they're going to switch from a 1099 paying job to get a 40-hour work week or a salary job, we can go right off 30 days pay stubs right off of that. No problem. But to blend
it, go off the base pay. Yeah.
You go off the base pay no matter what. If you get overtime, I can't use it. But if you switch companies from a 1099 and go to a new company, get W-2 that's the same field, I don't think they're going to blend the W-2 income. They're not going to go up the first 30 days pay stubs of that W-2 and average it with the 1099 when it's a commission or it's paid per load truck driver or it's part-time with variable hours. So that's going to be complicated. So always try to take a full-time position as a salary or a 40-hour work week or 35 hours, as long as it's consistently 35 and not all over the place, then you can switch from the 1099. So since that rule is so strict and it was hurting people who had pretty decent income and they did qualify for a mortgage, we've had some things change in the last 5 or 6 years, and it's called a 1099 program. And what we can do is we don't show any tax returns. It's a low doc loan. It's going to require a higher down payment and a higher interest rate, but we can use 90% of your 1099. If you have a 1 year 1099 and you made 100,000, we'll use 90% of that. That's $90,000 income. But you need like a 720 credit score to get 10% down. You can't get anything less than 10% down. So the 3%, the 3.5%, or the VA 0% down will not be an option for you. Minimum 10%. The worse your score is, the more and more money you need down. But the good news is,
Alex,
yes.
I want to add to what you're talking. I just spoke to an underwriter an hour ago on this just to confirm what was still available. So yes, you're correct on 720, 1099. You could be 1 year 1099. You don't necessarily have to be 2 years self-employed as long as you're in the same line of work. So like in the truck driver example, if you were a W-2 truck driver and then a year ago you switched to 1099, they'll let you do that. And it's 10, like you said, 10% down on the 1099 only.
Well, you could, yeah. So you don't even have to be W-2. Yeah, right. I see what you're saying. Right.
The
2 years.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that's a program that we allow for. And if you do switch to a 1099 from a W-2, but you got 1 year, you have that option. So if you've been told no by banks because you have a 1099 job and you've only been there for a year, we can do that program for you. But the ultimate way to do it is the average of 2 year tax return and adjusted gross income. That's the best way to do it. So when you're 1099, I want you guys all to remember, try not to deduct things on your taxes if you know you're going to buy a house. It's the rule of thumb for me is when you're self-employed or 1099, either you pay the IRS and you can buy a house with your income, or you don't pay the IRS, but you can't qualify for a mortgage. So keep that in mind. The less taxes you're paying, the less house you're going to qualify for. So don't make that mistake. You're going to have to balance out what your expenses are to make sure you don't have to pay too much. And you're going to want to make sure that you make enough to qualify for a house. Now, when you're 1099, you don't write off a lot of stuff. You get stuck with a tax bill. And if you owe those taxes, either you have to be on a payment plan or pay them in full. So keep that in mind when you are trying to maximize your income. You are going to probably be stuck with a higher tax bill than you're used to. So be prepared for what happens after that. And again, that's either pay that balance in full before you get a mortgage, or be on a payment plan by the time you apply for the mortgage, because they'll accept that payment plan as debt against you. So that's kind of all I have to say about 1099. Dale, if you want to add something to that, go ahead.
So you're right. I mean, your example, your comparison is right. Like if you choose to write everything off, it makes it much more difficult to qualify for a mortgage. But the only thing I would adjust to that is that doesn't mean you can't get a mortgage. You're just going to have to put a bigger down payment down. And you're going to have to have a solid FICO score, like 720 and up.
Right.
Or if you go lower than 720, then you're going to have to put 20% down or 15% down. Probably not to go below 660 no matter what.
So here's another thing I know about 1099. So let's say you are a vacuum salesman in 2021, and now you're a car salesman, you're 1099. You can't average those two. They don't mix. It's oil and water. So when you're trying to average your income for 2 years, make sure you're in the same field. You can't have 6 1099s in the last 2 years, and they're all multiple different fields, and we can't use that. But that's not really 2 years experience full-time anywhere, because you got multiple careers. There's no way to blend it. You've got deductions all over the place. The underwriters just won't use it. Do you agree with that, Dale?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, it's best to be in the same field. You could have 3 jobs. You could work for, let's say you're a truck driver. You can work for truck company A, truck company B, and truck company C as kind of like a moonlighter for all 3 of them. And you do the same thing. You work for 3 or 4 the next year. That's okay. We can use all those 1099s. And the way you deduct it and your adjusted gross off of all of them, we can blend those because it's all the same job. You're just paid by different companies for the same type of work. You're just kind of like, you got your own little business and you work for a bunch of different little companies, but it's the same career. You can do that, but you can't work for McDonald's, and then be an electrician, and then paint houses and have 1099s and do 3 different jobs the following year and add those all together and average that income, because they don't blend. They're not going to do that. So keep that in mind.
That's where the stability of income,
Right,
issue
right.
comes up.
Yeah, you're just a little too erratic for an underwriter to say, I can make sense of what you do for a living.
But there are programs, and we'll talk about it on another one. There are programs for somebody like that with the
Yes.
right down payment. Yep.
There is. Yep. Yep. So I think there's not a lot to say about 1099 income. Just be careful that you don't write off your income too much, because they're going to off the adjusted gross. Right now, I believe that's line 11 on your tax returns. It's not so basic. Most 1099 people file a Schedule C, and what they do is they show their net gross at the top, or not their net, but their gross at the top, and they start itemizing their expenses, and then the Schedule C will say net income, and they'll carry that over to line 11 on the first page of your tax returns. And that's pretty much a safe number to go off of if you've got nothing else going on in your life. If you don't have any other.
One more number on there. If it's a Schedule C, you can go to line 31, the net profit from that given year, and do a 2-year average. Yep.
Right. And if it's the only thing you have in your tax returns, you don't have anything exotic on there at all, I can really just look at line 11 on 21 and 22 tax returns and come up with the money and average those two, and I can figure out what your yearly income is. Now, when you're 1099, that's the weird thing. 2023, we're almost done with 2023. You might be making $1 million this year. It's not going to help you. They're going to average the last 2 years. They're not going to use any of this income until it's filed. Now, I believe you can file quarterly as a 1099 employee. If you want to capture this year's income, if you file to the tax returns quarterly, you can capture the year-to-date income. But if you don't file, that $1 million you're making in 2023 is meaningless, because there's no way to show what you've earned, and they're not going to try to predict what you're going to expense on those earnings. So they're going to go off 21 and 22 average. So that's the downside about 1099. If you're having a great year to date and the year's not over, you can't really capture it unless you do quarterly filings. And I think that's about it. Dale, anything else?
No, there's not a lot to say with it, but if you're attending this Facebook Live, and if the 1099 doesn't work for you, there's other ways we can do stuff, and we're going to be doing videos in the upcoming weeks on that.
Sure. Does anybody have any questions out there? No questions. All right. I like to tell everybody to like and subscribe to the video. It helps us help you, and we love to help you guys. Call us anytime. Our phone number is down below. Make a comment. We'll answer your question, and we'll see you next week. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right, bye.